Allied warplanes hit an Iraqi armored column as President Bush says he will call the shots.
It's going according to plan. We are going to set the timetable for what lies ahead, not Saddam Hussein.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. Tonight, America at war.
Good evening. As we approach the end of week 3 of the war in the Persian Gulf, the Iranians now are trying to get involved as peace brokers, while the Allied air war continues without let-up. The Iranian offer remains just that, an offer to mediate. However, as NBC's Fred Francis at the Pentagon tells us now, American military strategists are much more concerned with Iraq's military planning. Fred?
Tom, that's right. Pentagon intelligence analysts say they expect Saddam Hussein to again order some of his ground troops to go on the attack before U.S. troops are ready for their own offensive. Saddam has his Republican Guards, 150,000 men with tanks on the northern border. But in Kuwait and near Saudi territory are tens of thousands of other combat-ready troops with heavy tanks. As U.S. forces spread out facing those troops and the Iraqi border, there is a constant surveillance, spy satellites, warning aircraft, and reconnaissance patrols waiting to spot an Iraqi thrust south. Unlike last week's probing action with 500 to 600 men in 4 locations, it would not surprise Pentagon sources if Saddam sent at least 10,000 men into Saudi Arabia. More important, say the sources, lightly dug-in U.S. divisions would be unable to repel the attack immediately. But by the second day of the assault, the sources believe it would evolve into a killing zone. U.S. tanks would close on Iraqi flanks, artillery would block a retreat, and combat aircraft would destroy everything else left on the open desert. For Saddam, hunkered down in a bunker in Baghdad any length of time in Saudi Arabia, any U.S. combat deaths, no matter how severe his own losses, would be a grand political victory. Today, Secretary of Defense Cheney also warned that Saddam may use what is left of his Air Force for a massive raid into the south.
But he still retains some capability there. He's still got a number of pilots, a number of aircraft, and he might try to find some way to mount some kind of an assault against us with those aircraft. So you have to be sensitive to that.
Cheney and military leaders are also sensitive to Iraqi commando attacks on built-up U.S. positions near the border. Iraqis on foot in the desert could cause great havoc. And finally, the sources say, expect Saddam to once again use environmental terrorism, dumping millions of barrels of oil into the Persian Gulf. Tom?
Thank you, Fred Francis at the Pentagon. Marine officials in the Gulf said today that their attack planes knocked out 25 Iraqi tanks as they moved through Kuwait and 5 to 10 Iraqi vehicles moving in a convoy last night. NBC's Arthur Kent is in Saudi Arabia tonight, and he tells us there is a new player in all of this action. Arthur?
Tom, U.S. and allied forces continue to coordinate their fire on Iraq and Kuwait, and today an old warhorse was brought into action to add power and accuracy to the Allied attack.
The USS Missouri has fired cruise missiles in this conflict, but today its 16-inch guns, like these shown in practice fire, lofted 7 2,000-pound shells at Iraqi command bunkers in Kuwait. U.S. officials say the bunkers were destroyed, that the battleship's accuracy makes it worth risking in operations within 25 miles of Iraqi-controlled shoreline. Allied airstrikes, too, have taken out more Iraqi supply dumps and command centers. And here, British Buccaneer bombers hit a railway bridge. Allied warplanes have forced Iraqi armored columns to change tactics.
We're now beginning to see them cut their vehicle convoys down to 5 and 10 vehicles at a time. Clearly some indication they're trying to minimize the target they present to our friendly air.
On the Allied side of the ground war, Prince Fahid visited Saudi troops wounded in last week's fighting in Khafji. This soldier says he wants to rejoin his comrades in the fight and to defend his holy country.
This is 90.
In the desert, French and U.S. troops inspect each other's weapons.
Confusing, you know, Iraqis have one just like it, and, you know, and you got to distinguish, you got to be looking real close.
Primer feed automatically comes over.
The key to avoiding confusion, say field commanders, position Allied forces properly before a battle and keep them apart when the fighting starts.
But casualties among Allied forces from misdirected or friendly fire are expected. Today, one British commander commented on the 7 Marines who were killed by a U.S. warplane's missile last week. And he said, "These things happen in war, always have, always will." Tom?